I have a brake modification. It's one of the fixes to improve braking power for hydraulic oil disc brake system for electric scooters, like mine, for example. I've been having a lot of brake issues. Right now, my scooter has 1,000 miles on it. Unfortunately, these brakes, the brake pad, especially the brake pads, they only last 500 miles. Anywhere from 500 to 700 miles before it loses braking power tremendously. There's a sudden drop of braking power after so many miles. This is the point. Up to this point, you'll get very powerful, responsive brakes. But then when the pads wear out, at this point, about 50%, mine started wearing out. My brake pads worn down to about 40% when I reached about 500 miles. And it started losing brake pressure and braking power. I had to squeeze in my trigger, my brake levers all the way, both left and right, front and back, to barely bring it to a stop. I've been having a lot of problems for the last 2 months. Right now I have 1,000 miles on the scooter, and I came up with solutions. I tried different things. I tried bleeding the brakes, as it's posted in one of my videos, my older videos. It does help bleeding the brakes because it regains some of that pressure. You'll gain some of that brake pressure, and it improves braking. But it's a temporary fix, because I found out that when these brake pads wear out, about 50% or more, obviously there's going to be more play when you press the brake levers for the pads to touch the brake disc. And when there's more play, it also loses braking power. I found out that it's not because the material changes. Turned out it has nothing to do with that. It's just that after a certain range, when you press the levers, when you go past the optimal range, it loses braking power tremendously. So it doesn't give you that same stopping power when your brake pads are new. So the distance definitely is the key. The gap between the disc and the brake pads. The brake pads has to either need to have a new brake pads, or you need to come up with some other solution, which I'm going to show you now. Because you can't get brake pads, it's not easy to get them. Local places, they're out of it, they're out of stock. They run out fast. And if you try to get these from Alibaba, Chinese web store, it's going to take you 2 months. How can you wait that long? It would have been better if you purchase extra set of brake pads in advance, so that you won't be, stuck with the old one and having to wait for the new ones to arrive. In order for you to get your scooter up and running, there is a fix to this. The idea is to apply epoxy, metal epoxy material on the other side of the shim, the outer side. The outer side here. Um, this would be the metal epoxy. If you apply like maybe 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter. Mine, I applied about 1.5 millimeter thickness of metal epoxy on this side of the shim using this. It's a JB Weld 2-part epoxy. This part is steel, this is hardener. You mix them together 50-50, and then you can apply it on surfaces for bonding. And they dry in 1 day. They come to fully dry and it gets hardened like metal. It becomes like part of metal. So you're basically, what I did is I increased the mass, the thickness of the brake pad, the brake shim, not the pad here. I left this alone, but I'm talking about the other side, the outer side of the shim, where the caliper piston pushes. This is the caliper, and this is the piston. The piston is about the same size as the height, the length, the height of the brake shim. They're almost the same. So what I did was I applied that metal epoxy here to increase the thickness. And it basically, what it did was it restored my brake pads like a new brake pads. I thought that it would not, even if I get it to work, I thought that I would not get the same braking power like when it was new. It turned out I was wrong. I was surprised that it works. I am now able to, my brakes work like a brand new brakes. It makes that much of difference. So this is one of the ways to extend the life of your brake pads. If you can't get brake pads, if you can't buy them right now, or you are waiting on them and you need the scooter up and running right away, this is what you can do. I did it both front and back, front wheel and the rear wheel brakes, and it is working. Now it brakes effortlessly without even squeezing the lever hard. Even just slight touch of slight pressure of brake levers, it stops immediately. It is that good, so I'm surprised. This I paid, I don't know, $4 for this metal epoxy, but they work. And when I apply this epoxy here and here, because it's now thicker, it is hard to put it inside the caliper. You know, the brake pads will be here, right? Inside the caliper. what you can do is you can use sandpaper to shave this off at an angle. You can shave this off, then it's easier to place this inside the caliper. So I was able to do that because this is not going to affect braking because the discs are not going to be touching here. The discs are over here. See? So that's what I did. What was I gonna say? Yeah, and I had to use sandpaper to smooth the surface. When I applied the metal epoxy here, I had to smooth the surface. Only area that I applied epoxy is just this circle here, not the whole thing. You leave that alone. Just here, just the circle part. All I had to do was just place the sandpaper, 80 grit and 160 grit sandpaper, lay it on the floor or on the desk, and just rub it against it until it flattens out, so you get a nice flat surface. And then I finished it with 160 grit sandpaper to smooth out the surface. And then all I did was just place them into the caliper. And now it feels like I got brand new brake pads. I had to adjust the screw on the brake levers to fine tune the distance, the spacing, the gap for brake pads so that they won't touch the disc. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. Unfortunately, these brake pads, they only last very short. It's nothing like cars. Cars can last you 30,000 miles with a brand new set of brakes before they go bad. Scooters can only last you 500 to 700 miles. So you're gonna have to be prepared to replace brake pads more often, or apply a modification like I did to increase the life of the brake pads. This is one of the modifications. I have another modification coming soon, which I will be sharing. But all this will help with your braking power so that you can have safe scooter riding on the street. You know, you don't want your scooter fail to brake and end up crashing into another car, you know. So this is very critical. All right.